Object menu has many more options than any of the other main menu headings. As before, there are many we have covered in previous videos, and many whose purpose we must skip for now and describe in later videos. Transform is the first entry in this menu list, and, like most that follow, it has a sub-menu. Move, rotate, and scale are the most fundamental operations which we have used extensively in previous videos, so we can skip them without comment. To sphere can only be meaningfully used when we have selected several objects. It attempts to reposition those objects so that they tend towards a spherical distribution. In the example we see here, the set of cubes move to create a spherical shape. The degree to which this happens is determined by the to-sphere value we can see in the Tool Settings area in the top left of the 3D viewport. Moving the mouse pointer to the right increases the value. Moving it left decreases the value. Left-clicking completes the operation and produces parameters in the last op panel. It's here, in the Factor field, that we can adjust the value we created by dragging the mouse. A value of 1.0 gives a maximum effect, while 0 has no effect on the distribution of the selected objects. The other fields in the panel can be ignored. Shear slides parallel objects past each other. Although more widely used in edit mode, we can create the effect in object mode when we have a large selection of objects. To demonstrate, we'll use the same collection of cubes as before. Moving the mouse pointer left or right determines the direction of the shear, and pressing the left mouse button completes the operation. In the last op panel, the offset value determines the degree and direction of the shear. Axis and axis ortho define the plane along which the objects slide. Objects on one side of the plane move in one direction, those on the other side in the opposite direction. Notice that objects further from the plane move more than those close to it. Orientation defines which axes set the axis and axis ortho are referring to with various axis sets to choose from. Bend reorganizes the selected objects to create a bending effect. This is certainly the strangest of the options here, and the result is difficult to predict. Once we select this operation, we need to move the mouse to some selected point and then begin dragging. The positions of the 3D cursor and the starting point of the drag define the axis on which the bending takes place. The distance between the 3D cursor and the mouse pointer controls the sharpness of the bend. The angle of the mouse pointer initially defined axis controls the bend angle. Holding down the Alt key while dragging allows for a circular bending. In reality, it's all a bit of guesswork, and the results can be widely different each time we use this option. Notice that there is no last op panel for this operation. Push-pull moves the selected objects away from or towards a medium point. Moving the mouse pointer up or down controls the effect. Left-clicking the mouse completes the operation and brings up the last op panel for the operation. Distance determines if the selected objects move outward using negative values, or inwards using positive values. Large enough positive values move the objects out the other side so that we have another form of expansion. Move texture space and scale texture space relate to texturing objects and will be covered in a later video. Align to transform orientation aligns the selected object or object's local axes to match the axes set currently selected in the Orientation Transform field. In the last op panel, we can change the value in the Orientation field to select a different axis set to align the object's local axes to. Randomize Transform can assign a random rotation, scale, and move component to every selected object. Each selected object will automatically have its own unique adjustments. When we first choose this option, we won't see any changes. To create the effect, we must adjust the default values given in the last op panel. Seed defines the seed value of the random generator. A change to the seed value will give a different result to every selected item. The Transform Delta checkbox is only of interest when creating animations, so we'll ignore it for now. If we check the Randomize Location box, we can then set a limit to the distances our selected objects can be moved in the X, Y, and Z directions. In the same way, we can limit the rotation and scale in all three directions by selecting the Randomize Rotation and Randomize Scaling boxes and adjusting their associated values. By checking the Scale Even box, we restrict scaling to be equal in all three directions, meaning that our objects retain their original form. Align Objects adjusts the position of all the selected objects so that they sit in a line. Exactly which line depends on the target specified. To see how this works, we'll start with 4 randomly positioned cubes and a cone. And for reasons that will become apparent in a moment, we'll make the bounding box of the cone visible. Remember, a bounding box is the smallest box shape that will totally enclose an object. There's no need to view the bounding box of each cube, since it will exactly match the dimensions of the cube itself. With all 5 objects selected, we'll perform the Align Objects operation. Exactly what happens now depends on the settings in the last op panel. Checking High Quality activates a more advanced formula for calculating the location and current bounding box alignment of the selected objects. Align mode is used to state which part of each object is to be aligned. There are 3 options. Centers aligns the centers of the selected objects with the target. Negative sides aligns the negative side of each selected object's bounding box with the target. All positive sides aligns the positive side of the bounding box. We'll start our example with Align Mode set to Centers. Relative to defines the target the selected objects are to align to. The choices here are Scene Origin, which refers to the world origin. 3D Cursor aligns the selected objects with the 3D cursor. Selection aligns the selected objects with the median point of all origins of the selected objects. Active aligns the selected objects with the active object. We'll use Scene Origin. The final entry in the last op panel is Align with options X, Y, or Z. This specifies which coordinate of the selected objects is to be adjusted to produce the alignment. By setting Align to Z, and because we have specified Centers and Scene Origin for the other fields, the objects are repositioned so that their Z-coordinate is 0. We can see this if we look at the coordinates of any objects in the sidebar. And front view shows the new alignment of the items. Notice that the orientation of each object remains unchanged. If we were to change the A-line value from Z to X, then the objects will move so that the X-coordinate of each is set to 0. Now let's change Relative to 3D Cursor. The objects now reposition themselves to align with the 3D cursor. Next, we'll change Align to negative sides, and finally to positive sides.